All right, guys, Ben Stucker here from MortgageCS with Alexis. Alexis, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Alexis Ortega. I'm out of the Keller Williams Philly office. I'm a resident here in South Philly in East Passyunk, the neighborhood we're in currently.
Now, you said Passyunk.
Yes.
I might be inclined to say Passyunk.
Yes.
Because I don't live here.
Yes.
But
the correct way to say it is if it was an SH, so it's Passyunk. It's actually a Lenape word, so the Indians that were resided here, it means in the valley.
Okay, so do I sound local here in Passyunk?
100%.
All right, fantastic.
South Philly.
All right, great. So tell us a little bit about this community.
Well, this is a community that was historically very Italian influenced. So a lot of immigrants moved here, developed communities, organizations in the area. There's about 160 independent businesses up and down Passyunk, all throughout the neighborhood here. Yeah, restaurants, shops, stores, so all the things you can find.
And it looks like there's this main drag, right? That's Passyunk Ave.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned earlier today when we were talking that that's where the restaurants are, right? That's the vibe, right? You go up and down that street, and that's where your spots are, right?
Yeah, so historically, I guess this road used to be a trail for Native Americans going from the Schuylkill River to the Delaware River.
Oh, wow.
So they put all this restaurants and stores here. So as you walk up and down from southwest to northeast, there's just stores and shops, community people outside enjoying the town.
Well, that's amazing, yeah. And just this morning, we're here in a beautiful morning in springtime, just before spring probably, and there is definitely dogs out, community. There's, I see buses, so transportation seems to be pretty accessible. Cool. Well, what are some of your favorite spots here? I mean, looks like there's a lot to choose from.
Yeah, some of my favorite spots. If you want something casual, best burger in the city, Fountain Porter around the corner. $6 a burger, and you just go in and enjoy it. But in this square, just this area, we have River twice. There's Pearl behind me. Ember and Ash, so a lot of restaurants, a lot of places to stop into and grab a drink and enjoy the time.
That's awesome. So Alexis, tell us a little bit about the housing market here. If I'm a buyer thinking about buying Passyunk area, what are some of the things that I should know?
Okay, so at the moment, there's about 28 active properties for sale in the area. There's some supply. There's not as aggressive in supply and demand as the suburbs. At this moment, the list price average for this area is about $385,000 with a closing price of $358,000 for single-family homes in the area.
Okay, that's I mean, relative to some of the suburbs, $350,000 is a pretty affordable price, right, for a first-time buyer?
I totally agree. I would say over the last 12 months, according to RPR, the price of the home has went up about 10%. The difference is when the suburbs in here, simply size.
Okay, gotcha. So what type of buyer are you seeing in this area? Is it young professionals? Are they families? Is it, a mix, or what do you see?
So I definitely see a mix of a little bit of everything in the area. The average age group for the people in the neighborhood is about 24 to 54 years old. Okay. So you get new families, young professionals, some older Gen Zers, but a lot of the millennial group is here.
There's nothing wrong with the older people, right?
No, not at all.
Make sure.
Not at all.
All right, great. Alexis, all right, so tell us a little bit about the typical home here, right? What should someone expect if they're coming down to look at properties for the day, and they call you up and they say, hey, Alexis, I'm coming down, I want to check out homes in Passyunk. What should they expect for a typical home?
Yeah, so it's a row home. It's Philadelphia full of row homes. The style of row home changes depending on the neighborhood you're in. In South Philly here, you get two types of row homes. So on the numbered streets, they tend to be 3 floors. It's called a streetcar townhome. So they can be anywhere between 1,800, about 2,300 square feet, somewhere a little larger. And then you have what's called a working man's home, which is on the streets with the names. They tend to be 2 floors, smallest you see around 750 square feet to about 1,200 square feet.
That's actually really interesting. Is that true for all of Philadelphia?
So yeah, so the row homes, the style changes depending on when they were built. Most of the homes in this area were built around 1920.
Oh, that's super interesting. That's cool. I'm gonna definitely check that out when I walk around.
Yeah,
so thanks for that.
Definitely.
Cool. Awesome. So would you say this is a good environment for first-time buyers? I mean, it looks like the social life is probably really strong with Passyunk Ave having all the restaurants and the bars and everything and coffee shops, and I've seen dogs and young people everywhere this morning so far, right? So what do you think about this from a first-time buyer perspective? Is this a great market for a first-time buyer?
As an experienced first-time buyer, I bought my home last year here. It's my first home purchase. I moved to the area. Okay. This neighborhood is very community-oriented. The East Passyunk Business Improvement District does a really great job of putting on events together, getting the community involved. We have street fairs. We have the Miracle South 13th Street, which is a holiday light special that people come from all over the area to see. So it's very community oriented.
Well, that's great. That's great. Well, congratulations on buying your first house.
Thank you.
So, all right. So, Alexis, tell us So we drove in this morning, right? And on this gorgeous day here in the spring, and we found a parking space pretty easily, just a couple blocks away from here, which was great. But talk to me about transportation. Talk to me about parking, because that's a consideration, right? If a house doesn't have a garage, if it doesn't have a parking space, what should I be thinking about? And how does this neighborhood, particularly as part of maybe Philadelphia, I might be thinking of other areas too, talk to me about the transportation.
Yeah,
And how that
so
works.
I'm a fan of public transportation, whether taking the bus, taking the subway, whatever it may be. It's convenience to not have to move your car. This is South Philadelphia, so if anyone's heard anything about South Philadelphia parking, it is very notorious down here. As you go a little bit northern in this neighborhood, it's a little easier to park. As you go a little further south, it can be a little more difficult. But public transportation, the bus is going by right now. It goes right up the avenue, right up 11th Street, so you can get right into Center City nice and easy.
That's great. And as I look down Passyunk Ave here, I see that some of the restaurants have what we've seen in Philadelphia, sort of the typical expansion into the street, right? Which actually is really nice. Like you can see, many places have that set up. Do you have any sense of that being a permanent thing, or has there been any talk of that you've heard of?
There are conversations, I believe, currently right now that expires at the end of the year. I know a lot of the restaurants are in conversation with Mayor Kenny, so hopefully they can extend that and further make it a permanent thing. A lot of businesses have benefit greatly from having the ability to have more seats outside during the pandemic.
Cool. So Alexis, we see a lot, right? As a mortgage company, we see a lot of investors coming, I think, to Philadelphia. Well, I know to Philadelphia, sometimes from New York and other areas around as well. Is this an area where in Philadelphia you have a lot of investor interactions?
Yes, I would definitely say so. From an investor's perspective, when you're always looking at things, renters, the people that are going to be in your property is very important. So in this area, you get a lot of good renters. It's not the cheapest area to start an investment property in this area, but you have the monetary funds to get into it. This is a beautiful area, and people are continuing to invest in the area. There's a lot of turnover left to happen. There's still some generations previously that can still turn over to new generations.
That's actually a really interesting statement there. So talk to me about the properties here. How many properties, or it may be hard to know this, but talk to me about like the aged properties where an investor might come in and say, it needs work, it needs elbow grease, it needs investment, but when it's done, it's going to move up to here, right? Because there are some instances that we've seen just walking around today of, clearly brand new construction homes, right? And I'm pretty sure there probably was not a lot sitting there for 100 years, right? Probably was an old house that was taken down. What's your sense of this community with respect to sort of the turnover that you just mentioned? How many homes are being rehabbed and new ones popping up? And talk to me about new construction and things like that.
Yeah, so I would say with this neighborhood, because of the community that it has involved, you don't see the townhome construction that you're seeing in Fishtown, in Brewerytown, and Northern Liberties and things of that nature, because people want to keep the aesthetic of South Philadelphia.
Which, by the way, as someone who has lived next to someone that's been going through construction, it's not a bad thing to not have your neighborhood being rebuilt every week. It's not a bad thing.
There's definitely construction happening. So a lot of what you're getting down here is people purchasing a home and then rehabbing. They're either gutting the home as an investor and then rehabbing the property. At the moment, I'm seeing a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom property. Could be about 1,000 square feet with a finished basement. Will sell about $430,000, depending on the proximity of the avenue. The closer you get to the avenue, the little higher price your property can demand.
So this is like the Jersey Shore.
And
you go a block off or 2 blocks off, right?
The price changes
less and less
a little
expensive.
bit.
Great. So Alexis, tell me a little bit about your experience here as an agent.
My experience has been positive. I'm in the middle of year 2 right now, so to some people, he's a new guy, but continuing to learn every day. I've lived in the neighborhood for about 6 years now and enjoy all parts of the city and wherever it may be.
And I think being in the neighborhood that you work in all the time is so important, right? Because for 6 years you've been here experiencing and seeing the change and understanding the market. And as someone who also recently bought a first-time, as a first-time buyer, right? You also had that experience, so you were looking very intently at the properties from 2 lenses, right? As an agent and as a buyer, right? Which is great, because for someone who is a first-time buyer, having that fluency that you have, you're really going to help them sort of get through that process.
Going through the experience adds to it, so I can convey an experience from a perspective that I went through it as well. I understand how they feel, and conveying the neighborhood. I love it here. That's why I moved here. It's easy to sell.
Cool. Now, were you your own agent?
I was.
Would you give yourself a 5-star rating?
I sure hope so. I think we'd have to ask my wife, and then we get a better answer there.
Okay, great. So let's talk about the buyers. right now, right? So this is one of the strongest sellers markets we've ever seen here in 2022, right? Leftover from last year, we have a lot of pent-up demand. Being a buyer is hard, right? Buyers can sometimes feel frustrated. How are you helping your buyers manage expectations when it comes to, what's going on in the process and potential not getting the house that you're making an offer on because there's 20 other people doing the same thing? Talk to me about that a little bit.
Well, it's a conversation. You understand that communication is really important with your buyer, conveying the message. You have to understand you can't fall in love with a property until it's your property. So we do everything we can to prepare them. You make sure they're ready to go. If you find a property you like, you do everything correctly. Something as simple as filling out the offer correctly, reading the listing agent's directions, and when they ask you to do something, to approach the situation correctly to allow the buyer to have the best advantage they can. Everyone's situation is different, so depending on the offer, that depends on the buyer. But we try to approach the situation with clear communication and clear line of sight.
It's funny, in our experience as a mortgage company, it's easy to do things operationally correct. It might be harder to not fall in love with the property when you walk inside, right? Because the people that are out there and pre-approved or thinking about buying a house, they walk in the door and they say, oh my gosh, this is it, right? And then you have to calm them down a little bit and say, hold on, guys.
We're gonna do everything we can.
Do everything we can, right? So talk to me about some of those things. Now, do you ever reach out to the listing agent? Is there follow-up there? So give me some of that insight.
Definitely. So the idea will be to connect with the agent. So if you like the property, try to conduct as much information as possible and try to find what's driving the seller. Person selling the property, what's conveying them, what drives them to get rid of the property, and then we can play to their emotions in some way, whatever we can to do the best, and we can present the best offer we can.
That's great. That's great. And what else would be something that you would want to share with someone considering buying in this area, reaching out to you and communicating? How can they? What would be something good for them to understand about you and how you work?
How I work? I'm free to talk. I like to be casual. I want you to be comfortable talking to me and feel okay. I appreciate any opportunity someone has. They want to have a conversation with me. It can be about anything. It can be about real estate. It can be talking about where to get something to eat. So whatever it is, I want them to be comfortable and have a feeling of okay to communicate with me back.
That's great. That's great. Well, I get the sense. I might be calling you and asking you where I should go to dinner because I'm going to come down and check this place out a little bit more. I love the vibe down here. This is a very relaxed area, right? We've been waving at people, smiling at people. I mean, great transportation. I've seen probably 30 dogs, which I love.
Very dog friendly in this neighborhood.
This is great. It's a really great area. So, all right, Alexis, got a question that's really important for you, right? There are a lot of first-time buyers out there, and there's probably a huge amount of first-time buyers that are waiting to buy a house that maybe have been a little bit or felt a little bit shut out of the market with cash buyers and big down payments over the last few years. What's the best advice that you would give to a first-time buyer right now entering the market? What would it be?
What I would say is, if you don't have a lender, find an agent that can connect you with a lender. Finding a relationship that you can establish with a lender is beautiful, and it can help you a lot. They can plan with you and find out what you can afford, what you can purchase, and what you're comfortable with paying. Most people shop solely on their interest rate, but it's more than that. It's about the relationship, the communication, the planning, and the time, and the attentiveness that the lender gives you.
We've been fortunate enough to work on a handful of transactions together, and one of the things I think that stands out with the way you communicate with your clients, and then we follow suit, of course, is really working with them to help them understand what can they afford, what are they comfortable with, because there is an amount that a bank will finance you for, right? Now, we all know that amount may be way too much, or it might be, hey, that doesn't work for me, why, right? So you have to understand that and have that conversation. How do you help your buyers understand sort of the payment and things like that? Talk to me a little bit about real estate taxes down here, maybe, and give me insights there.
Well, down in the city itself, the biggest thing that people understand is that transfer tax. That's a 2% fee that not everyone is always aware. It can be one of the highest expenses you can make in a transaction. And one of the things that I've learned more than anything in getting into this business is there is a lot more than one way to buy a house. So everyone's situation is different. So in communication with your lender, you can understand and develop a plan with your agent as well. to make the best plan and the best approach you can to get the home that you desire.
That's a really good insight. It is. There's not a one size fits all here, right?
Not at all.
So cool. So I appreciate your expertise. I appreciate you coming out.
Definitely.
So thank you so much, guys. Explore Passyunk here in Philadelphia. It's a great community. Alexis, thank you so much for your time
Ben,
today.
it was my pleasure. Thank you for coming
Absolutely.
down into the neighborhood and having a conversation with me. I appreciate your time.
All right, guys. Have a good day.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Have a good one. Follow Ben at MortgageCS
That's it.
Instagram.
Yeah.
And myself, I'm Alexis Ortega, Lexiortegaa.
At Go Mortgage CS.
Go MortgageCS.
Go Mortgage CS.